So at the beginning of 2019, I ended up watching a film called Venom, and this is with Tom Hardy. And after watching it, and during the time when I was watching it, I ended up thinking about how this is a good example of what happens when someone is out of touch with their aggression and ends up reintegrating their aggression. But of course, as this is a comic book film, it's done in a very exaggerated way. And I'm now going to read out the article that I wrote just after I had watched the film. And this is what I said. A few months ago, a friend of mine said that he had watched Venom and that it was a good film. I ended up watching the film with another friend and thought that it wasn't too bad. Shortly after I had watched it, I thought that it seemed to lack something, as I found it hard to really connect with the film. After a few hours passed, my focus on what the film was like was replaced by what I thought the film was really about. The film starts off with a probe crashing down to Earth after it had discovered a comet that was covered in symbiotic life forms. One of the symbiotes ends up taking over a woman and soon takes over other people. The other three symbiotes end up back at the search facility in San Francisco, and this is when it is discovered that they can't survive without an oxygen-breathing host. It is around this time that we meet Eddie and his fiancée Anne, who appear to be deeply in love. While Eddie is at Anne's house, he has a look through some classified documents that go over what is taking place at the Life Foundation. His fiancée has these documents because she is a lawyer who is preparing to defend the foundation. When Eddie interviews Carlton, he brings up some of the things that he saw on his fiancée's laptop. The outcome of this is that both Eddie and Anne are fired from their jobs, which results in the latter ending the relationship. Naturally, this hits Eddie hard. Not only has he lost his job, but his fiancée has also left him. However, even though Eddie is not in a good way, he wasn't exactly someone who was full of life before. So if anything, what has taken place just ends up adding even more pain to his life. His passive nature is exemplified when his neighbour plays his musical instrument loudly, making it impossible for him to sleep, yet he doesn't do anything. When Brock goes to the research facility to look for evidence, he notices a woman who he brought a paper from on the street. This doesn't go to plan though, as a symbiote that is in her ends up transferring to him. Now that Eddie no longer has the parasite in his body, he is no longer someone who will put up with bad behaviour. His being has been taken over, and this has given him superhuman powers, powers that human beings are unable to handle. Once Eddie has just about destroyed the SWAT team that tried to kill him, Anne takes him to her boyfriend's office. This is when the parasite is removed from Eddie with the help of an MRI machine, and he then goes back to being a normal human being. But even though he doesn't have the same strength, having this parasite in his body has given him more confidence. One thing that emphasizes this is when he headbutts one of the security guards. Eddie is able to kill the other symbiote, and it appears as though the symbiote that was within him has also died. It soon becomes clear that it is still in Eddie. The only difference is that it has now integrated with his being. Without this parasite, Eddie was weak, and when this parasite took over, Eddie was out of control. Now that they have merged with each other, they have the power to do a lot of good in the world. In the beginning then, Eddie didn't have a good relationship with his aggression. This part of him was most likely being directed towards his inner critic, which caused him to be low in confidence, passive, and depressed. The next step was for his aggression to be externalized, with this causing him to behave in destructive ways. It was no longer being absorbed by him. His external environment had to deal with it. Finally, he was able to get to the point where he no longer directed it towards himself, and he no longer felt the need to direct it towards others. Through developing a healthy relationship with this side of his nature, he was able to utilize the power within him to become a more powerful human being. Conclusion. Whether or not this is what the writer or writers of the film or comic had in mind when they wrote it is something I can't answer, but this is how I have interpreted it. The aggression within someone is what gives them the energy that they need to really live life. When this part of them is not integrated, it can cause them to either harm themselves or to harm others, or to alternate between the two. It is usually trauma that causes someone to have an unhealthy relationship with this part of themselves. Maybe you have watched the film and you came to a similar conclusion, or maybe you came to another conclusion, or maybe you didn't even notice this aspect of the film. And if you haven't, I would recommend that you watch this film, as it shows, to me, someone going from the transition of being very much disconnected from their aggression to being taken over by it, and then integrating their aggression. And this can be what often happens, so someone can be out of touch with their anger and aggression. It can be very passive, very tolerant, and just put up with everything. And then once they start to reconnect to this part of them, they can end up doing things that they wouldn't usually do and losing control, and they can end up feeling guilty and ashamed, and then they can gradually come into the middle. So through being more integrated, their boundaries are better, and they have more drive, more oomph, and this will then allow them to really embrace life and to stand up for themselves and to go after what it is that they want to experience and achieve. And to go from being very disconnected to being integrated can take quite some time, because if someone is in a very disconnected state, then they are likely to be carrying a lot of pain on top. And through integrating, through working through this pain and becoming more integrated, they will be a more integrated human being. So if you are in this position, then you may need to reach out for external support. If you would like to find out more about the services that I offer, please go to www.oliverjrcooper.co.uk or email me at info@oliverjrcooper.co.uk, and I'm looking forward to assisting you on your journey.